Welcome to episode 14 of the Ulysses Unlocked podcast, where we analyze Ulysses by James Joyce, one page at a time. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment to support us.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're moving straight into a deep dive now, really concentrating on, well, the end of the Telemachus chapter.
That's right. Those last couple pages, 18 and 19, intense stuff.
Yeah, really intense final interactions there. And for this exploration, we've got, the usual suspects, the text itself, obviously, but also some great historical commentary on Dublin in 1904, plus plenty of literary analysis.
Absolutely. And our mission today, well, it's pretty crucial for understanding the whole arc of the novel, isn't it? We need to dig into Stephen Dedalus's exit, both physically and, psychologically, from that Martello Tower.
It seems short, but there's a lot packed in.
Oh, definitely. It's dense. You've got the immediate social drama, this heavy philosophical stuff, mostly from Mulligan, and then these deep political currents running underneath. It all pushes Stephen towards exile, physical and spiritual.
And for you listening, this is really the moment, the decisive break between Stephen and Buck Mulligan. That relationship's been sort of suffocating him.
Exactly. The end of the road for them, at least for now.
So to really get that break, we need to know where they are, right? The action literally moves downhill, away from the tower.
Yep, down this winding path to the famous 40-foot hole at Sandy Cove.
And our sources paint quite a picture of this place. It's an ocean swimming spot just nearby the tower, but historically, well, it was a bit specific, wasn't it?
Oh, very specific. A real enclave. See, back in 1904, the 40-foot was strictly gentlemen only.
Gentlemen only.
Yeah, reflecting that rigid sort of sexual segregation of the time. And here's a detail that often surprises people today. Because it was just men.
The swimsuits were optional.
Totally optional, often not worn at all. It was a place for naked swimming, communal immersion. Joyce uses this detail, I think, to underscore that pagan, uninhibited vibe Mulligan loves.
Right, so it's this ancient, almost ritualistic cleansing place, but still fenced in by these very strict Edwardian social rules.
Precisely. That context is vital, especially when you think about Mulligan's performance later.
Definitely. And just to clarify the geography for everyone listening, the text calls it the creek. Now, if you're maybe used to American English, you might picture a little stream, a brook, something like that.
But yeah, in this context, on the Irish coast, our linguistic sources are clear. A creek means a narrow sort of inlet or recess in the coastline.
Like a rocky bay.
Exactly, where the sea comes right in. It's secluded. Quite dramatic, actually. A perfect stage for the end of this chapter where one character gets, symbolically cast out.
Okay, so down at this creek, the scene kicks off immediately. It's dynamic. We see Mulligan looking all casual and confident, standing on a rock, shirt sleeves rolled up.
Yeah, and there's already a young man in the water, described as the deep jelly of the water, swimming frog-wise.
Frog-wise. Great image. But then the first really striking figure appears, this elderly man surfacing near the rock. Very vivid description. Glowing red face and a garland of gray hair.
And the scene barely takes in the environment before it jumps straight into, rapid-fire gossip. Joyce is a master at this, weaving huge structural stuff into what seems like just casual chat.
So before the old guy even gets dressed, one of the young swimmers asks Mulligan about his brother.
Yep, and Mulligan replies, quick as anything, down in Westmeath, with the Bannons.
Now, okay, this seems like just a throwaway line, but our sources, they really flag this up as important.
Hugely important. This brother, Alec Bannon, he's not just some random character. He's down in Mullingar, the main town in Westmeath, and get this, he is, right at this moment, meeting Millie Bloom.
Millie Bloom. Leopold Bloom's daughter, the hero of the rest of the book.
Exactly. So this tiny bit of dialogue, which Stephen barely even notices, is the very first textual link. The first time these two narrative threads, Stephen's and Bloom's, actually sort of touch.
Wow. It's a secret connection for the reader, but Stephen's completely oblivious.
Completely. And look at the nature of the connection. It's immediately sexualized, objectifying. Bannon, the brother, sent a postcard saying he found a sweet young thing down there. Photo girl, he calls her.
Photo girl.
And Mulligan, well, he can't resist a crude joke, can he? Jumps right in with, snapshot, eh? Brief exposure.
That brief exposure joke.
Yeah.
It sounds like typical lads' banter.
Yeah.
But the analysis of the time, the context, shows it lands with, well, quite a bit of sociological weight, doesn't it?
Immense weight. You have to understand Millie Bloom's actual job. She's working at Phil Shaw's photographic shop in Mullingar. That part's true.
Okay.
But the phrase photo girl in 1904 Dublin, it was loaded. Sources show these were often attractive young women hired not just for, say, technical skills, but really to market the plays, drum up trade. They were kind of like early 20th century pinups in a way.
Part of this emerging visual culture.
Exactly. They were linked to those famous and slightly risque Kodak Girls ads you saw at the time.
Ah.
Those ads showed women in, for the time, daring clothes, suggesting they were flirtatious, adventurous, maybe sexually suggestive, all very modern and maybe a bit dangerous for a young woman in conservative Ireland.
So Mulligan's joke instantly connects Millie to all that. The suggestive postcards, the whole burgeoning pornography scene even.
Pretty much. It frames Millie immediately, for Stephen and for us, not just as a working girl, but as an object of male interest, male projection. It really sets the stage for Leopold Bloom's anxieties about his daughter later on.
That really does shift the tone. It's not just a throwaway joke. It's reflecting how young women were seen as they started moving into these new kinds of jobs.
And the gossip just keeps flowing, doesn't it? Straight from that sexual speculation to economic reality. The young swimmer mentions their friend Seymour.
Right, Seymour. He's chucked medicine and is going in for the army.
Chucked medicine. So abandoned a pretty respectable career path.
For the military. And this gets immediately linked to another girl, Lily Carlisle. He was spooning with him last night on the pier.
Yes, spooning, which back then meant, intense romantic stuff, often physical. And the conversation goes straight to the potential consequence. Mulligan asks that very pointed question.
Is she up the pole?
Meaning, is Lily pregnant and unmarried?
That's the clear implication.
And that one question probably explains Seymour's sudden career change, giving up medicine for the British Army. Well, it wasn't usually the first choice for an educated Dublin guy.
No.
But our historical sources, they confirm that enlisting was one of the few ways to guarantee gainful employment in 1904 Dublin, especially if a young man suddenly had, well, an obligation, like a shotgun wedding or supporting an illegitimate child.
So it's presented as a potential move out of financial and social desperation, driven by limited options if you broke the rules.
It really highlights the constraints on young people then. And you've got to remember the political side, too. Thousands of Irishmen, nearly 30,000, had just fought for Britain in the Boer War a few years earlier.
Serving the empire.
Exactly. So Seymour joining up reinforces that complex, often tragic link between Irishmen and the British military, the very power occupying their country, but offering security. It's a tiny paragraph, but it's packed with sex, money, class, empire. It's all in there.
Yeah, it really proves how much Joyce layers under the surface of what looks like just morning chat by the sea.
Definitely. So as that bit of gossip winds down, the focus shifts back to the old swimmer, the priest.
Right, the elderly bather.
Yeah.
He's finally scrambled up onto the rocks, and the text emphasizes the water glistening on his pate and on its garland of gray hair, almost a holy image.
Almost. But Mulligan immediately turns it into a performance, a mockery.
Of course he does.
He makes a big show of noticing the bather, then looks over at Stephen and Haines and deliberately crossed himself piously with his thumbnail at brow and lips and breastbone.
He's explicitly identifying him as a priest for the others.
Yes, it's a signal. And that's key for the parody that follows, because Joyce then uses this language that both elevates and mocks the priest at the same time. He describes where the priest is getting changed discreetly, modestly, using these loaded terms. He mentions his gray nimbus in a miche.
Nimbus and knees.
Think about those words. A nimbus is that garland of gray hair, sure, but it's also a halo, isn't it, in art, associated with saints, divinity.
Right.
And a niche. That's an architectural feature, a recess built specifically to hold a statue, usually a saint statue.
So Joyce is giving this ordinary act, an old man, drawing himself this kind of mock religious aura.
Precisely. Setting up this contrast between the pagan energy Mulligan's about to unleash and the sort of quiet Christian restraint of the priest.
Which is the perfect setup for Mulligan's big philosophical entrance. He rips off his shirt, strikes a pose.
And launches into this grand declaration. My 12th rib is gone. I'm the Übermensch. Toothless Kinch and I, the Supermen.
Okay, there's a lot going on there. The Übermensch and the rib.
Yeah, he's grabbing these huge ideas and, well, arguably chippening them for effect. First, the missing rib. That's straight out of Genesis, isn't it? Adam's rib.
Right, Eve being made from Adam's rib. He's suggesting he's like Adam before the fall.
Exactly. The original unfallen man. back to a kind of secular Eden, free from Christian myth.
And then straight from Adam to the Übermensch.
Friedrich Nietzsche's concept? The overman. For Nietzsche, this was the ideal future human, someone who creates their own values, overcomes what he saw as the soul-killing heritage of Christian ethics, rejects pity, guilt, weakness worship. It's radical stuff. Self-transcendence.
But Mulligan throws in that insult, toothless kinch. That feels deliberately cool, not just banter.
Oh, it's cruel. It hits a real nerve. Stephen Dedalus genuinely had bad teeth in 1904. We see him later agonizing about decay, wondering whether to spend money on a dentist or food.
So Mulligan, the self-proclaimed Superman, is painting his friend as the opposite. Weak, physically falling apart.
Exactly. The irony is thick. Mulligan's the hedonist, the performer, but he's co-opting this high German philosophy, making the whole Superman idea sound, well, a bit ridiculous.
We know Joyce himself was reading a lot of Nietzsche around this time, right? He even signed letters, James Overman.
He did. So this section is partly Joyce looking back, maybe critiquing his own youthful philosophical intensity, showing how easily these profound revolutionary ideas can become just shallow performance, especially in the hands of someone like Mulligan.
The hard work of Nietzsche's idea, creating new values, gets reduced to a boast before a swim.
Precisely. And then comes the absolute peak of the parody in this chapter. Mulligan dives into the sea, but just before he does, he delivers this solemn, twisted line.
He who stealeth from the poor lendeth to the Lord. Thus spake Zarathustra.
That's the kicker. To really get it, you need to know the original source he's messing with.
It sounds biblical, but wrong.
It's a direct perversion of Proverbs 19.17. The actual Bible verse says, "He that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord."
Pity and charity. Core Christian virtues.
Exactly. Mulligan swaps pity for stealeth. He completely inverts the Christian ethic. Instead of promoting generosity, compassion, he's celebrating, well, a moral egoism, theft even. And he pins it on Zarathustra, Nietzsche's prophet figure.
So he's justifying selfishness, rejecting traditional morals, and dressing it up in philosophical language.
That's it in a nutshell. That one distorted quote sums up the whole intellectual fight. Mulligan's performative, life-affirming paganism versus the pity-bound Christian past. Stephen just can't escape.
And that twisted phrase, it actually comes back later in the book, doesn't it? Used by Stephen himself.
It does, yeah. Much later, in the Oxen of the Sun chapter, when Stephen's drunk and angry, he throws out the same line.
But for a different reason.
Totally different. Stephen uses it not to celebrate selfishness, but to attack the financial greed and hypocrisy he sees in the institutional church. Things like charging fees for births and deaths, birth and death pence. He argues the church profits from the poor.
So Mulligan uses it as a shallow boast, but Stephen internalizes it and turns it into this bitter weapon against institutional power.
Exactly. It shows how these big ideas that Mulligan just plays with are actually sources of real torment and political anger for Stephen.
Okay, so the philosophical fireworks are over. Mulligan's in the water. And the dynamic shifts again, this time to just raw power. Stephen sees his moment.
Yep. He decides he's had enough, announces it simply, "I'm going Mulligan." It's his decisive move away from this whole toxic scene.
But the break isn't clean, is it? Mulligan, standing there naked, physically dominant, he immediately demands things from Stephen.
He strips him of the last shreds of dignity and belonging. 2 demands. "Give us that key, Kinch," Buck Mulligan said, "to keep my chemise flat."
The key to the tower.
And then money. "And 2 pence, he said, for a pint. Throw it there."
The key and 2 pence. And Stephen just hands them over. It's utterly humiliating. The text sums it up so starkly. Dressing, undressing.
Yeah. That little phrase says everything, doesn't it? Dressing, undressing. It's a total role reversal. Stephen, who actually paid the rent for the tower, is being stripped. The key was his symbol of belonging, of having a place.
Mulligan's basically evicting him.
It's an eviction notice right there. As Doug Pope points out in his analysis, Stephen is effectively made homeless on June 16th. And having to give Mulligan money for a pint, it just underlines how predatory the whole relationship is. He's paying his tormentor for the privilege of being thrown out.
It's the final petty cruelty that seals the deal after all the philosophical sparring.
Absolutely. And as Stephen walks away up that path, thinking about it all, he looks back. He sees Mulligan's head out in the water, described as a sleek brown head, a seal's, far out on the water, round.
Seal's head.
And Stephen's internal reaction to that sight is the one word that defines this whole chapter for him. Usurper.
Usurper. That really crystallizes everything he's feeling. Why that specific word linked to the image of the seal's head?
Well, usurper is such a loaded term, tapping right into those epic stories haunting Stephen. Psychologically, he feels robbed of his home, his status, maybe even his artistic voice.
Like Telemachus in the Odyssey, with the suitors taking over his house.
Exactly, or like Hamlet, whose uncle stole the throne. Mulligan isn't just a mate being annoying, he's become this archetype of the one who takes what isn't rightfully his.
So he's not just a bully. He's elevated to this epic antagonist in Stephen's mind.
Yes, but there's a deeper layer too, maybe more painful for Stephen as an aspiring artist. Mulligan has also usurped his role.
What do you mean?
Throughout this first chapter, think about it. Stephen's been sullen, quiet, paralyzed by grief over his mother. Mulligan, though, he's been ebullient, charming, and active. He's the one quoting Greek, reciting Swinburne, name-dropping Nietzsche, entertaining Haines the Englishman.
He's performing the part of the witty intellectual, the literateur, using Stephen's own interests almost.
Precisely. He's co-opted the role of the Hellenizing bard, turning Stephen's serious intellectual resources into performance, into social ammunition. As critics point out, Mulligan's always on stage. Stephen's pushed into the shadows.
So Usurper confirms Stephen's awareness that he's been completely pushed out of his own center, artistically and intellectual.
Yes. And that realization forces the physical departure. It's the final straw. He has to leave.
Which sets him off on his day's journey looking for, well, maybe a different kind of connection, a different father figure.
Definitely. So as he walks away from the 40-foot, the focus shifts again. He leaves the personal drama with Mulligan and walks right back into the political reality, embodied by Haines, the Englishman.
Haines's parting words really drive that home, don't they? He says, quite patronizingly, "We'll see you again," smiling at Wild Irish.
Yeah, Haines is playing the role of the friendly, slightly superior colonial visitor, making a joke about the cliché of the wild Irish temperament.
And Stephen's internal reaction is immediate. Vicious, even, he thinks. Horn of a bull, hoof of a horse, smile of a Saxon.
That's an old Irish proverb, isn't it? A list of things traditionally feared.
Exactly. Putting the smile of a Saxon, the Englishman's smile alongside a bull's horn and a horse's hoof, well, it equates English friendliness with potential danger. Mortal danger, almost.
It's a powerful indictment of what Stephen sees as the deceptive nature of the conqueror. And that term Haines uses, wild Irish, it's historically significant.
How so?
Our sources point out it was used for centuries by the English, a contemptuous term for the native Gaelic Irish living outside the area around Dublin under direct English control. It implied they were uncivilized, needed taming.
So Stephen immediately hits back in his mind with his own labels for the English?
He does. He thinks Saxon, Sassanic, which is a Gaelic term meaning English person, often used contemptuously, and then that really interesting one, palefaces.
Palefaces? That sounds almost like something from, like, American Westerns.
It does, but the thinking is it was probably used by the Irish to flip the script on colonial racism.
Flip the script how?
Well, the English often stereotype the Irish as being darker, physically degenerate, intellectually inferior. Calling the English palefaces mocks their appearance, suggesting they're cold, bloodless, maybe emotionally vacant. It's a kind of internalized resistance, reversing the racist gaze.
So he sees Haines as the absolute outsider, the stranger in the house. It taps into centuries of resentment. His exile is political, too.
Deeply political. He can't feel at home in his own land while it's under English control. And then, as he walks further up the path, that political anger seems to give way to something deeper, more personal, spiritual grief.
Right, he starts recalling these Latin fragments. Liliata rudulantium, terma circumdet, iubilantium te virginum.
And this is just devastating. These aren't random Latin phrases he's plucked from nowhere.
No, they're front.
They're fragments from the Ordo Commendationis Anime. It's the rite for the commending of a departing soul, basically the prayers for the dying.
Ah, so he's remembering his mother's deathbed again.
Exactly. It confirms that deep wound, his guilt over not praying for her, is still right there, raw and isolating. His physical leaving the tower is mirrored by this internal spiritual moment, like a commending of his own troubled soul.
That profound sadness.
Yeah.
And then it connects incredibly subtly to the objective world, to the time of day. This leads us to what you call the quarter to mystery. How do these Latin prayers link to the clock?
Okay, this is pure Joyce genius. Look at the structure, the rhythm. Stephen recalls 3 distinct Latin phrases, right? Each one gets its own line in the text.
3 lines. Liliata rudulantium, tuma circumdet, ubilantium te virginum.
Right. Now hold that thought. Jump ahead to the next chapter. Leopold Bloom is leaving his house, and he has this little triple repetition too. Hey-ho, hi-ho, hi-ho. Also broken onto 3 separate lines.
So Stephen's tragic triple thought and Bloom's kind of everyday sighing triple thought.
Exactly. The hidden link is sound. Both men, miles apart physically, totally separate in their thoughts and worries, are actually hearing the exact same sound at the exact same moment.
Which is?
The chimes of a church bell. Probably St. George's Church, given their location.
Okay, but why 3 repetitions? Why 3 lines?
Because of how the Cambridge or Westminster Quarters chime works, the famous Big Ben melody, it's built in 4-note segments. 1 segment rings for quarter past, 2 segments ring for half past.
Segments ring for a quarter to the hour.
Precisely. 3 distinct bursts of melody mean it's 8:45 a.m.
Wow. So they're both hearing the bells chime quarter to 9.
They are. Stephen hears those 3 chimes, and his mind overlays them with the 3 Latin phrases, the weight of death, guilt. Bloom hears the same 3 chimes, and his mind overlays them with his triple hi-ho, the sigh of ordinary life, maybe a bit of melancholy. It's confirmed later, by the way, in the Ithaca chapter, which lists all the sounds.
So Joyce uses the objective sound of the clock, the church bells, to secretly link his 2 main characters right at the start, even while the narrative emphasizes how separate they are.
It's brilliant structural foreshadowing. It tells us their paths are synchronized, running in parallel, even if they don't know it. They're bound by the same objective time, but experiencing it totally differently.
It really shows how subjective experience gets mapped onto the external world in this book. The same sound triggers guilt in one, a sigh in the other.
Exactly. It's a core theme. The structure of the novel reflects the structure of consciousness itself.
Okay, so the time is set, the connection made, albeit secretly. The chapter is basically drawing to a close. But there's one last instruction shouted out.
Right. Before Stephen completely vanishes up the path, Mulligan yells out the plan for later. "The ship!" Buck Mulligan cried. 12:30, 5 Lower Abbey Street.
The ship? That was a real place.
Oh yeah, a well-known hotel and pub. Our sources say it was big, popular, especially with writers, journalists, Dublin's literary crowd. So 12:30 p.m. is the meeting time after Stephen finishes his teaching job for the morning.
But crucially, Stephen never shows up, does he?
He completely blows it off, ignores the instruction, even though he's now technically homeless and probably could use that pint Mulligan owes him, or maybe hoped Mulligan would pay.
So avoiding that meeting is the final act of separation.
It really is. Mulligan was likely counting on Stephen to fund a glorious drunk, continuing the pattern of exploitation. But Stephen's rejection of Mulligan, the usurper, his need for distance, is stronger than even his immediate practical needs. Skipping the ship meeting seals the exile he declared internally with that word.
Which brings us right back to that final image. Mulligan's head in the water, seen by Stephen as a seal's, and then the label, usurper.
That juxtaposition is key, isn't it? The simple physical reality, a man's head in the water, instantly transformed by Stephen's mind into this mythological, animalistic symbol of the usurper who's robbed him.
Yeah. The sleek brown seal becomes the antagonist.
And that leaves us with a final thought, maybe something provocative for you, the listener, to take away as you keep reading Ulysses. The novel starts by challenging how we perceive identity, how we see things.
How often do we do that? Look at the world or people and just slap a label, a metaphor, a myth onto them.
Exactly. Obscuring the plain reality of what's actually there. Stephen sees his swimming friend through the filter of his own trauma and literary baggage, turning him into a symbol, a beast, an exile maker. So the big question Ulysses keeps asking is, can we ever really perceive the world, or even ourselves clearly, without the distorting lens of our own stories, our own personal myths?